In this video, I'll be covering how to write hi-hats for beats in Ableton Live 10. It's all going to start with finding a good hi-hat sound that you can use. I'm going to highlight 4 bars and insert a MIDI clip. That's good enough. That probably sounds pretty familiar, the progression from many other hip-hop tracks. Another thing hip-hop producers tend to do is apply an EQ to their hi-hat and automate, aka filter, out some high frequencies on certain hits. So to do that, you're going to select your frequency knob here and you're going to click on Show Automation in New Lane. One method that they typically use is they filter out some of the high frequencies on the second and fourth hi-hat hit, like so. Now there's no real rule to this, you can just play it by ear and see what sounds good. Different hi-hats will need different filtering. Some are lower, so they have a lower tone, so you may have to filter out more to actually get this effect going, and others will, just naturally be very high to begin with, and you'll only need to filter out a little bit to get this effect. So that sounds pretty good. I'm going to duplicate this all the way across the 4 bars. Another thing hip-hop producers tend to do is, at the end of the 4-bar clip, they'll chop up the hat. So instead of it hitting once, they'll have it hit twice just to give it a little bit of a variation. Like so. And if you were to extend this into an 8-bar clip, let's just duplicate all of this and then consolidate it into one. You could, for example, just duplicate all of that, and it would give it a bit of a variation compared to the end of the 4th bar. Like so. The next step is to find a hi-hat with a very small tail or no tail at all, preferably something very short and snappy to draw in some rolls with. Draw in the 4-bar MIDI clip, and you can put rolls typically before a snare hits, on the snare, or after the snare. Those are the 3 most common parts where you hear them. And in this case, the snare is going to be hitting on this bar, so we can put some rolls right before the snare hits. I'm going to duplicate this all the way across. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to automate the pitch bend of the hi-hat rolls. You can duplicate this all the way across, and then, for example, move this over to this side and see if that's fitting. The next thing is to go back to the audio effects, drag and drop an EQ8 on it, and do the same thing. Right click on the frequency and show automation in New Lane. Now here you can either have the hi-hats being filtered in or filtered out. I'm going to duplicate the automation across. And that's that. Now we can go back to the original hi-hat rhythm that we have. Another thing that can be done here is you can automate the velocity at which these notes are going to play, the second and the fourth ones, the same ones that we're also filtering the high frequencies out of. And the trick that they use is when they lower the frequency or they lower the velocity, they'll also lower the length of the note in the MIDI clip. You'll mostly hear a difference when doing this if your hi-hat has a longer tail. That's when you'll really be able to feel or hear this difference. I'm going to duplicate that all the way across. Another thing is you can come to the end of the second bar and you can right click, change this into triplet grid, and draw in triplet notes and remove the original note here. And one thing is you can go down 5 notes and it'll give it a little more of a unique feel, so to speak. Like that. Again, I'll edit the velocity so they're not as loud. And this can also be duplicated all the way across. Whereas it would clash with this part. So probably just duplicate this across the 4 bars. If you want to add a little bit of variation, instead of having it also hit 5 notes lower the second time, you can maybe go up and have it hit 3 notes higher, like so. Well, that's a bit too quiet. Turn up the velocity. And there you have it.